Welcome to A Course in Miracles, where you'll discover health and well-being through inner peace. Your host is Eloisa Ramos, EFT master and author of Beyond Self-Esteem, Discovering Your Boundless Self-Worth. Using EFT, the Ramos clearing technique, and the principles of A Course in Miracles, you'll learn how to open your mind to healing and to all that is inherently yours: deep fulfillment, vitality, joy, and inner peace.
Welcome, everyone, to today's program, The Real Truth of Our Nature with A Course in Miracles. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and I am very happy to be back with you. We are going to be studying the text of A Course in Miracles. The previous programs that I did were focused on the lessons in A Course in Miracles, and today we're going to begin studying the text, and we're going to start with a preface. My intention for this and the upcoming programs is to focus on topics that are critical in understanding health and healing. So for this reason, today's program will focus on the distinction between knowledge and perception, which we find in the preface. The preface tells us that knowledge and perception lead to completely opposite thought system. It follows then that depending on which thought system we employ, we will come to completely opposite conclusions about what our nature and identity is. So, being able to distinguish between these two thought systems and between knowledge and perception is imperative in the way that I see it. Because in order to be able to decide what we want to believe we are, we need to be able to distinguish between them, since they are completely opposite. And so believing in one completely cancels out the other. They also show us two opposite worlds, one based on love and the other based on fear. So until we decide which one is truly real and reflect our true nature, we will shift back and forth between them, depending on which thought system our mind follows. So the question of identity is a big deal to me, since in my experience, trying to reconcile these two opposing thought systems and trying to hold on to both is quite stressful and entails great internal conflict. The going back and forth between one and the other feels like the mind is split. There's one part that knows and is connected to truth, and the other that relies on perception and can never be quite certain of what it knows. So what is our true nature? What do we want to believe we are? Most of us lean in one direction or another. And so when we look at the world, it becomes very clear which decision we make most of the time. And this is why A Course in Miracles says that we need to change our mind. Because for the most part, we have already chosen to believe we are ego bodies and follow and trust our perception. But is this decision in alignment with truth? No. If it was, we would be perceiving and experiencing a world of only love, health, and perfect happiness. This ego body self-identity is out of alignment with our true divine nature, and so will interfere with the manifestation of heaven on earth. Healing and perfect happiness is found in our inherent true nature, whose foundation is truth or knowledge. When there is healing and perfect happiness, our true nature is being revealed. If we look at a child, they can be perfect for no reason. If they fall and skin their knee, we know with certainty that a process begins immediately that aims to repair the damaged skin and heal the wound. Yes, we can support the process by keeping the wound clean, but irregardless of what we do, the healing comes naturally because this regeneration and repair process is inherent to the nature of life and growth. So, what we are seeking today is clarity so we can recognize our true nature. Because if healing and perfect happiness does not happen, it means there is a block to the knowing of our true nature. Our task, as I see it, is to be clear about what we are. This clarity brings inner peace and opens the door to receiving everything that is inherent in our true nature as creation and children of the one source of all life. To begin the topic for today, I want to use the idea of energy, which is not found in A Course in Miracles, but I think will be helpful in making the distinction between knowledge and perception more clear. When we explore the world, we inevitably use our physical senses. What we see, smell, hear, and touch, and taste appear to be objects that are solid or maybe not so solid, like liquids and gases. We call this the physical level or the physical world. But we also understand that our physical senses have a limited range of perception. Our senses have difficulty detecting objects that are very minuscule or are far away. Our eyes and ears can only see certain ranges of frequency in colors and sounds. We understand scientifically that all matter is composed of energy because matter or mass at its most minute form is just vibrating energy with a frequency. We accept this even if our physical senses cannot confirm it because we have the instruments that can detect those frequencies. We have telescopes that can see what our eyes could never see. But we don't always take into account this information and the limitations that our perception has when we are perceiving with our senses. What we commonly notice is that matter just feels dense and heavy. Different objects vary in this feeling depending on the degree of density and weight. Things like liquids or gases, for example, have a higher rate of vibration or frequency at the atomic level and feel to us like they have more space to them. So, for example, when we enter a room without a single piece of furniture, which is going to be full of air, it will feel empty to us. We perceive air as empty space, though it does have mass. Because of the differences in degrees in density and mass, our perception can separate and distinguish objects of varying weights and density. And it can differentiate one from another. attributing space between them. This is how our perception sees separation between objects. Once it has identified different objects, it can compare the objects to each other and notice differences. We learn and teach that a cat is separate from another cat and different from a dog, for example. We have practiced perceiving so much that it automatically notices differences and similarities between objects. So when we look at the world, we see different people with bodies that vary in shape, color, size, gender, etc. And we have learned to assign particular meaning and value to these differences. I may have a preference for bodies that are of a particular shape or gender, or like objects of a particular color, for example. In perceiving separation, boundaries, containment, and limitation are necessary in order for our mind to know that this is a separate thing from another and assign it its own name and definition. There can be no separate object without a boundary that gives it a beginning and an end, and that includes and excludes what is outside of it. The fact that at the subatomic level, everything is energy and there are no real boundaries doesn't even enter our mind, because this subatomic level is not immediately perceivable to our five senses. We are teaching our children to perceive separation as soon as they hear our words. Words are symbols that stand for something else. We say, this is a table, and the word table is assigned to an object that has particular attributes that make it different from what we call a chair. We also teach our children that these objects have different uses. So we will disapprove of the child if they want to sit on the table instead of the chair. In short, perception is necessary for us to see separation, and we need to employ it to believe we can be a separate ego body that's an object that is bounded, limited, and separate from everything else. Because we practice perception on a continuing daily basis, day in and day out, we have come to believe it is showing us reality. It is what is familiar to us. This feeling of solidity, of heaviness associated with mass is what we use and what tells us whether something is real or not. We just assume out of habit that if we can see, taste, touch, hear, or smell something, it must be real. But let's move to a more subtle level, one that is not as easy to perceive with our physical senses, the emotional level. It is not solid. Emotions are not solid, yet most of us have no problem perceiving emotions. Their frequency or energy vibration can be easily picked up by our physical senses because most often they resonate in our body and we can sense their effect. Sadness, for example, can have an accompanying sensation of wanting to cry, and tears can come to our eyes. Fear or worry can show up as tension or contraction somewhere in our body. But the lack of solidity of our emotions, their more subtle vibration, makes them easier to hide, ignore, or deny. In fact, some of us are quite skilled at hiding our emotions from others and from our own conscious awareness. When we go to an even more subtle level of vibration, the mental level of ideas, it gets even more difficult to perceive what's there. What we find, of course, are thoughts, beliefs, judgments, interpretations, images, memories, etc. All of these are also energy, and some of us can be more sensitive to the energy than others. They are more subtle than the emotional energy, and so it can be more difficult to notice. However, with determination and practice, we can also develop the skill to observe the forms in this level. We can notice particular thoughts, beliefs, judgments that we are having. We can also notice when we have images or pictures, or we are remembering the past. Meditation, of course, is very helpful in developing and refining this ability to hold our attention still enough and keep it from identifying with the forms at the mental level so we can observe them. I don't meditate, but the daily practice of doing EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and the Ramos clearing technique is what has refined this particular skill for me. We continue with the next level, which is even more subtle than the mental level. We call this the spiritual realm or the realm of knowledge, which is what A Course in Miracles calls it. It is where truth, with a TH, resides. This level is without form or boundary. It is pure spirit or energy. Here there is no separation at all. Knowledge, then, cannot be perceived with our physical senses. It is beyond the limitations of our perception. The energy or information found here is accessible to us, but only by direct communication, which bypasses the perceiving conceptual mind. Quote, knowledge is truth under one law, the law of love or God. Truth is unalterable, eternal, and unambiguous. It can be unrecognized, but it cannot be changed. It applies to everything that God created, and only what He created is real. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. It has no beginning and no end. It merely is. And this is from the Preface, page X. So, knowledge is truth, and truth is certain because it is unambiguous. It does not depend on how we have defined things, or on our particular point of view, or on what we want to believe. It just is. It cannot be changed. Perception, or the way we see things, can be changed and is always constantly in a state of flux and change. We update our understanding of the physical world quite often with new scientific discoveries. Our beliefs get updated as we grow and learn, for example, that Santa Claus is not real. So, change in the physical level, emotional level, and mental level does not change knowledge. The spiritual level remains unaffected by all change in the more dense levels because it is under one law, the law of love, which is eternal and unalterable. It also applies to everything that God created without exception. And only what God created is real. So, A Course in Miracles is teaching us that reality is eternal. That which has a beginning and an end and is separate and bounded is perceptual illusion. In the preface, it tells us in very few words what A Course in Miracles says. Quote, "Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." Unquote. So, reality is not at the physical level as we have believed. It is at the spiritual level. You can see that our thinking has been upside down, and it is going to take determination and effort to undo this. The spiritual level or truth cannot be threatened in any way by perceptual change. Separation, which is necessary to perceive attack, is meaningless here, and therefore, we as spiritual beings are completely safe. Illusion, which comes from perception, has no existence in reality and therefore cannot disturb the peace found in the mind that has come to know itself as spirit, as the one self that is creation, that is everything. Quote, "Heaven is the natural state of all the sons of God as He created them. Such is their reality forever. It has not changed because it has been forgotten." Unquote. Our perception teaches us the opposite of this. It says that reality is at the physical level, and therefore it is very difficult to undo the idea that we are not a physical body. From this assumption, we believe that physicality is our nature and that therefore we are separate from each other and from our Creator. It also makes us limited and subject to a beginning and therefore an end, which we call death. So, A Course in Miracles is one way for us to learn to change our mind about what we have been believing that we are. Our choice in deciding what our nature is going to determine what the world will reflect back to us. The world can only mirror back our thinking. And with this, I would like to conclude this topic. So thank you very much for joining me. And until next time, keep studying. Blessings to everyone.
For more information about EFT, muscle testing, working with Eloisa, and to download a free version of the Ramos Clearing Technique, visit www.healingwitheft.com.